Hello and welcome to the Quincy Access Television studios. I'm Mark Crosby. Thank you so much for joining me and my guest. My guest is 2nd Norfolk District State Representative. That is State Representative Tackey Chan. Representative Chan, great to have you back on the program. It's been a little while since we've chatted. I know that you chat on a weekly basis with one of my colleagues.
Yeah, Mark, it's wonderful to be here again. You're right, it seems too long between stints where we see each other. You actually become part of our show with your other colleague, Joe, that I do on a weekly basis, which is more, how do I put this, whatever comes to mind at the moment show.
Well, interesting because it goes often beyond the city, beyond the state, involving some issues that folks are, I guess, exposed to throughout the country. So it has a wider berth, I would say.
Oh, absolutely. It's just local issues, state issues, but also national issues as well as international issues. And honestly, sometimes we talk about our personal lives as well. I'm not exactly ready to give away all my food recipes, but every so often we talk about things that are just normal everyday life among ourselves, and that's very refreshing to do.
Yeah, it's certainly a different. It's a different, I guess, aspect of one's self, of one's character, and it's kind of good to basically show both sides. The one that's very, I suppose, not the word isn't political, but maybe enmeshed in political legislation locally, and as you said, the hobby in you, which I understand is cooking.
It's one of my things that I do for recreation, but it's also much less formal. I clean myself up just for you.
Ah, well, thank you. You look great. Let's talk about the FY26 budget and some of the budget earmarks.
Well, the FY26 budget is somewhat of a little question mark going in because of the changes to the big beautiful bill that did it in Congress, and the projection of the administration and its finance secretary saying that we could have a potential $650 million shortfall as a result of certain coupled components of the state tax law with the federal tax law. And right now, the governor has announced that she is not releasing anyone's earmarks, which is somewhere in the zone of $176+ million, until we have a clear picture of what's going on in fiscal year 26. So earmarks, for example, for Quincy Community Action Program, Germantown Neighborhood Center,
Quincy Asian Resources,
and many other groups in the city will be held in suspension. However, people don't realize that historically the governors don't release earmark money until December anyway. So it's actually quite an early announcement by the governor to let people be aware that you should not count on us. But that could change going to December.
And what are those earmarks monetary-wise?
It's about $100,000 for Germantown Neighborhood Center, and actually each of them get $100,000 actually in my district. So all three agencies do. But moving outside the district to Representative Ayers and Speaker Mariano's district, they have other projects of their own. In the case of Speaker Mariano and Representative Ayers, they have areas outside of Quincy they represent too. So it's going to be a tough year. Unfortunately, it might be a year we'll be giving a lot of bad news to folks, but let's not start that process yet until we have some confirmation of what's going on.
I don't want to spend too much time. Actually, maybe I'll get the speaker in to discuss the supplemental budget more, but just the other day, the supplemental budget was approved by the House.
Yeah, we call that the closeout budget. In my young days, we used to refer to it as the deficiency budget. So what it is the final reconciling of tax revenues from fiscal year 25. As you may know, some of the tax revenues actually come in October if people want to file their taxes late. So you don't actually get a final reconciliation until all the tax numbers are in. And a large chunk of that money is actually some interagency transfers and Medicaid reimbursement and paying off some bills. For example, snow removal money, any kind of storm damage money, things like that are pending bills that we are able to pay off. And one of the little things that's new in there is a small amount of money, actually $10 million is very small, to apply towards tourism for the June 2026 World Cup that's going to be coming to Massachusetts.
Interesting. Yes, I read about that. Well, we'll see what happens. I know the President Trump is threatening that event possibly not happening in the Commonwealth? Is there any truth to that?
Well, he has no say in the matter. The venues are picked by, by FIFA. It's FIFA, right? I'm not a soccer person, so
Right.
forgive me. But I mean, it's not picked by him. And those contracts have been signed to private venues. They're not public venues. Gillette Stadium's a private venue, right? So those contracts are signed. What that could be threatening, I'm not trying to scare people, is the visas. So you may be aware, not aware, that for foreign visitors to come to the United States, they have to pay an additional $250, I'm misspeaking, $250 per person addition to the current visa fee they pay now. So a visa fee is about 100, I think 85, now plus 250 per person. And it's like a homeland security fee, which is nil. So it actually will create a challenge for folks who may become deterred to come to the United States for tourism or school or work, because, especially for tourism, because if you're a family of four, that adds another $1,000 to come to the United States, and depending on the strength of the dollar, the country of origin, that could be cost prohibitive.
Let's talk about the consumer protection and professional licensure. And what you are the chair of this committee. And this committee, I guess we'll start with brokers' fees.
Sure.
And news on brokers' fees.
We've talked this on the show actually every time we've been on the show since we have talked about this. So what it is that when a tenant in some communities, not all communities, some communities, the tenant looks at an apartment, and when the tenant's ready to sign a agreement, you pay first month's rent, last month's rent, and security deposit. But suddenly a thing called a broker's fee shows up. And it's actually unannounced in many cases, where suddenly you find yourself paying a fourth month's rent to the broker. Now, follow this logic, people. If you are a tenant, one, they didn't disclose a fee. They don't always do. And second, you actually have no contract with the broker, because the broker is showing the apartment on behalf of the landlord. It is the landlord's contractee that is working. The broker works for the landlord. So by the tenant paying the broker, you're actually subsidizing the landlord's employee or contractee. And a funny thing there is that you also have an interesting conflict of interest, because you can't have one person representing two competing interests in a business transaction. So it's always been one of those things where it's interesting talking to people, especially landlords who are opposed getting rid of brokers' fees. They seem to okay with due representation, and also agree with new charges in a very tight housing market that works against the tenant. And the arguments that I will have to increase my rent monthly, well, I think most people who are listening will understand that it's easier to pay things on a monthly basis, particularly on a tight market as well as tight salaries, than it is to have an additional lump sum up front, of which you're already paying 3 lump sums. So the governor supported our proposal, as well as the Senate. New York City is actually one of the cities that moved very quickly in this matter. And we're very proud that this past year's budget, the FY26 budget that we approved this past July, removes this practice.
Registration of veterinarians.
This is a technical correction bill. So right now, veterinarian licenses are tied to birthdays, not a uniform date every year. All this really does is one thing. They put the date of the license renewal all on the same day.
So very similar to, I suppose, in the city of Quincy, to get your dog or cat immunized with a rabies vaccine, always the same day as opposed to the date of the animal.
Correct. It's pretty much a much simpler way for everyone to remember when their license is up. There is provision because, of course, to allow a phase-in approach, because everybody's license starts at your birthday, so it's a little bit of an adjustment.
Sure.
But it's actually designed to eventually finish that everyone starts at the same day. I believe, I'm trying to remember off the top of my head, but I believe it's the beginning of the year, but I could be wrong.
So it makes sense. That makes sense.
It's very simple.
Genetic counselors.
This is another technical correction bill. So about almost 20 years now, we have a licensing for genetic counselors in the state. The educational requirements the past 20 years, because of advancements in science, and we can talk all about the biotech industry here, and all the great things they've done, has resulted in new terminology and education requirements. And a lot of the terminology that was put into the law isn't the terminology we're using today. So this is actually another interesting technical correction bill to modernize a license to reflect the current science.
Happy hour ban. Talk about happy hour. That got some, well, it certainly has seen some new light, I guess, as far as changing hours.
It's come on and off over several years regarding happy hours. You and I are actually oddly old enough to remember happy hours.
I remember, yeah.
Yeah, neither one's actually could partake of happy hour. We were far too young.
True.
But we're very aware of happy hours and the consequences of happy hours regarding excessive drinking, and especially daytime drunk driving deaths. So for those of us older, remember the end of happy hours actually reduced drunk driving deaths in Massachusetts significantly.
Makes sense.
More recently, there's a younger generation in particular that believes they should bring back happy hour because they want to have cheap alcohol starting at an earlier time. And the claim is that it creates more of a benefit for restaurants. The Massachusetts Restaurant Association actually opposes happy hours. The economic model today actually works very well for them, and it's a race of a bottom to try to provide the cheapest alcohol. And one of the consequences of happy hours is that the people aren't inclined to buy main dishes, and restaurants are not bars. Bars are dependent on alcohol sales. Restaurants are dependent on meal sales, and then the alcohol is a supplemental.
Right.
So yes, some alcohol is actually very marked up in a restaurant, but it's supplemental to buying the meal. And the food, of course, it expires. So they want to be able to make sure the inventory on food is adequate so they don't have waste, because that's lost money.
Absolutely.
So you have a combination of issues there that I think the proponents don't quite understand, is that if I'm paying 3 times as much on alcohol because I'm going to buy half as much or a fraction less, it's going to not incentivize me to stay longer at a restaurant to consume an appetizer, maybe get an appetizer with a drink, but doesn't encourage a main dish, and it also may discourage me from having dessert or a coffee afterwards.
So where does this currently stand?
Study order.
Study order.
I'm not doing happy hours. I cannot speak on behalf of the Senate because we changed the way we do our committees this year. But as the House chair, that bill is not moving forward.
Let's talk about alcohol licenses and releasing the grip on, I suppose, a number of alcoholic licenses.
Oh, you want the show to go on in an hour?
Well, let's see. We're about halfway, so as brief as you can be, but
Yeah.
as informative.
Yeah, I was at a public hearing and made it clear that if I go into alcohol law in the state, this could be a 1-hour lecture. So let's try to keep it basic. With the exception of a small number of communities, your alcohol licensing for on-premise and off-premise, meaning restaurant and bars, and also retail stores, package stores, are set by quota population. So a certain number of licenses available depend on the size of your population. And the legislature set this up during the end of Prohibition, and actually about, not quite half, but almost half the states have actually similar types of variations of quota systems inside a 3-tier system of manufacturing, distribution, and then retail sales. And we're trying to prevent vertical monopolies. Actually, the 3-tier system prevents vertical monopolies. So ultimately, there's always been conversation on and off, actually, over the years about releasing or relaxing or changing the quota systems. For you to change your quota system, you actually have to come to the legislature, and what we refer to as a home rule petition, a petition for the community, to have additional licenses, of which I, as the chair of a committee, actually reviews and approves. But also, one of the things that happens is evaluation of licenses. So you may read in the Boston Globe and the Herald about high prices of Boston liquor licenses and transfers of greater than $600,000 sometimes. But that actually is a valuation because of the minimum number of licenses and an open market sale. Why is that important? During COVID, it became very apparent that restaurants are trying to survive by using their liquor licenses to get loans, because a license has value, and a bank will put a lien on the license to provide loans to restaurants where they want to start construction in a restaurant, do renovations, or in the case of COVID, just to try to stay afloat. And the more licenses you put into a community, because they're a limited number, changes the value of the remainder.
Sure.
And one of the things that cities and towns never tell their local restaurants, and I know this goes beyond Quincy, is they never tell the local restaurants to pass on a petition what the potential devaluation is on their local license. So my committee does great scrutiny regarding additional licenses for cities and towns, and looking out for the interests of the licensees currently there regarding the remaining valuations. Believe it or not, restaurants and bars don't not know level of work I put into to try to minimize the negative impact and evaluations they have when these home petitions come in.
Let's turn to AI, because I think we're all exposed to that in one form or another. Although I will say today that AI is not involved in any aspect of this particular program. We do have camera operators, we have a director in the studio. You and I are really here. This is a real table. But talk about AI and digital replicas.
If this was AI, they shaved 10 more years off of us. We'd be much
They
better
would.
looking. We would be so much better looking.
Well, that goes without saying.
So for full disclosure, I am a member of the Screen Actors Guild, so SAG-AFTRA is a union I've been in since 2008, so let's put that out there. And obviously I read a lot of the newsletters coming from the union. And you may have seen Sora most recently from OpenAI to allow you to create video images, and a lot of copyright issues. And one of the big challenges that actually affects us at QATV as well is, do you have a right to your own image? And this was less of an issue many years ago, but our current statute only reflects recordings, photographs, other types of what we call probably old-fashioned types of image collection that we all know and know how to use. But it never accounts for artificial intelligence. It never accounts for somebody else to be able to take your image and monetize it without your permission. And that actually extends to the dead. So one of the most actually famous trusts is actually the Elvis one, right? Between the ownership of the image and the copyright, as well as what remaining licenses they have of music and the other artwork they have, as well as his brand name. You have to pay a license to his estate for the purposes of using his image. But with the advent of AI, they could make Elvis come back to life, for example. And, you took a dead person's image and monetizing it. And most recently, OpenAI this morning had announced they're taking down images of Martin Luther King, which literally to today, actually, where people using his image and the family objected because it was done in an improper manner. So there needs to be state laws to hold greater accountability on image protection against monetization, because that is what belongs to us, as well as try to figure out how to do use responsibly. And the second one's actually going to be very challenging, because it's such a nascent issue that it's going to take time for us to figure out what's going on.
People could question, I guess, the definition of responsible.
Absolutely. Because if you're not monetizing it, but you're using it for some other type of gain, perhaps not monetary gain, that could be argued as improper usage. So let's pick one that's no monetary gain. Let's take campaigning. So obviously, I'm an elected official, and you campaign, perhaps use AI, and you co-opt someone's image for that. And you should pay a license for it, even though I'm not monetizing it in a retail manner, but I'm monetizing it for personal gain for re-election. It's like licensing for music. When you see those big conventions, all that music needs to be licensed.
Right.
But do I need to get permission to use someone else's image? Perhaps very much a public figure. And perhaps it's not a celebrity public figure. Maybe it's you as a private citizen. And I try to monetize you for my own purposes.
But could they argue, if they took a well-known figure and they altered the face, or they altered the characteristics enough, is there an argument there that they could use that? And could they come back and say, well, this isn't the actual person, this change is made?
Well, you talk about plagiarism, right? Exactly.
Probably, right.
Yeah. At what point does a research document or a columnist, we'll not name the columnists that we both know have done this and have been exposed, but at what point do you say that that's too similar to somebody else's? Same thing with music. Is that too similar to someone else's? That's a copyright issue, is always litigated in court. And people may be aware I actually do enjoy reading my comic books, but that has been a thing actually as well in comic books, about whether or not you're actually plagiarizing someone's art as opposed to creating your own art. And AI actually impacts not necessarily information gathering, but it really affects the artistic and the media community as well. Very much so. And what you're describing is a type of plagiarism.
I know we've talked about this. We actually do incorporate AI to a small degree in our editing software. But right now it's just the only thing that can be animated are cartoon characters, which have been generated by the program parent. They're not figures that look like you or me, so everything is fine and I guess well played here. But we know that just today, or just yesterday, I saw a clip on Instagram that I knew wasn't President Trump, but yet somebody could take it for President Trump. The face wasn't quite right. It was a generated image using I suppose, a base of the president.
Well, I don't know if you noticed, but in news media now, at the bottom of the page, they will actually indicate when I use artificial intelligence as part of writing an article.
Yes.
There is now increasing disclosure from reputable news sources actually saying out loud what parts and if it has an AI component regarding its research. As for images, as you just said, it's not necessarily new. For example, photoshopping, right? Remember there was a thing floating around on Twitter, now X, of Osama bin Laden's bloody corpse.
Right.
That was false. It was fictional. A certain U.S. senator, which I will not name, from the state, actually retweeted it, claiming that it was real, and not actually verifying whether it was real or not. So this is not a new problem. What is a new problem is that it's gotten even more sophisticated because it brings the image to life.
Yes.
That is the difference. There's a very big difference in seeing a photoshopped image, which has been going on for decades, versus an image of someone talking to you, and whether that triggers a positive, negative response from you is an individual situation. But it allows you to create more reality to it than just a photo.
I do want, as time is ticking away, we have so much we could talk about. Let's move to education and the legislation regarding food allergens.
Yeah, I have a bill out there filed several years now to require vocational schools of a culinary program to have all the students essentially go through what's called Safe Serve. So there's restaurants go through Safe Serve program to learn how to properly deal with food allergies, cross-contamination and allergens, and how to identify safe food safety. I just think it's some degree of common sense that vocational schools should be required to have their students do it as well. But also food disclosure, I have more food allergies the length of my arm. I'm very conscious of this issue, and I've been living with this problem for quite a long time.
But a lot of people do. And I know I've taught clinics, middle school clinics over the years, I think over 25 years. And increasingly, I'm getting notifications of allergies, specifically peanut allergies. I think that's more common, but didn't get those years ago. I don't know if they weren't discovered years ago or if we're just becoming a society that's more prone to reactions.
And the science of this is a little bit longer conversation. So the answer is all of the above. Right, we have a societal changes how we live, sanitation. We got through COVID, we learned all about sanitation, but also different types of exposures that different generations have regarding the environment. That's a long conversation, by the way. But also medical science is better in detection. So allergen testing has changed. I was surprised I didn't have to wear the 2-day prick pack on my back regarding last allergy test. I was actually quite surprised they were able to do a non-needle-based allergy test on my forearms on a number of different substances to determine a reaction. Every so often I have to go in to see if I have a new problem. So you got a combination of both.
Because I think, is it true that your body changes potentially drastically enough every 7 years? So something that you were or weren't allergic to 7 years ago, you could be or might not be now.
That's an urban legend. That's not true.
It's not true?
No.
Oh,
no,
good.
No,
okay.
No, that's not true. But you are correct. We do go through changes in our bodies every year. I fear my birthday because of potentially picking up a food allergy. But you could have immune system issues. You could have hormonal issues. Both men and women do have hormonal issues as they get older. Obviously, it's not the same for everyone. And not to be one of those people to tell you, but you should definitely get your checkup regularly. And as you get to a certain age, definitely get different kinds of cancer screening pursuant to your family history. And we're doing a little PSA here, folks.
Well said. Understood. No, totally. Let's talk about elder affairs and elder abuse.
I have also filed a bill for several years to expand the number of mandatory reporters to people who do elder care. Right now, mandatory reporters are very much limited to people who serve the disability community as well as children under 18. But it doesn't apply to a vulnerable population that is the elder community, our seniors. And if you have someone that's in the care, who takes care of seniors and sees something wrong, they should report it and become mandatory reporters. Now, I'm not saying that, you, or for example, I take care of my mother. Right? I would not be a mandatory reporter, but if you have a personal care assistant, or medical staff, and they see signs of abuse of an elder, they should definitely report. And this is something I'm hoping to get more attention this year.
Very good. Believe it or not, I think we are at the end of this program. Certainly, I will reach out and potentially have you back in short order to maybe expand upon some of the other things that we had touched upon today. But thank you so much.
No, thank you, Mark. I have a wonderful time, and I hope everybody enjoyed.
Very good. I think they did. I know they did. And thank you at home for watching. Please remember to support the local access station in the community in which you reside. Take care.